Most businesses think digital problems look obvious. A hacked website, a broken page, a public failure.
But most digital problems don't look like disasters. They look like silence. Visitors who never return. Referrals that quietly stop converting. Opportunities that disappear without explanation.
Your business may still be functioning online, but functioning and aligned are not the same thing.
Because every website, every search result, every profile, and every unanswered inconsistency is shaping perception before you ever enter the conversation.
And the dangerous part, most companies mistake momentum for stability.
Until growth slows, trust weakens, and they realize their digital presence has been working against them the entire time.
In this episode, we break down why businesses avoid digital stewardship and what that avoidance is silently costing them.
We see this illusion of stability constantly, especially with companies that have, been around for a while. A business is operating on pure momentum, and the leadership sleeps perfectly well at night because, well, they're getting business.
Right. It's the ultimate security blanket.
Exactly. The logic is just so simple to them. The revenue is coming in, therefore whatever we're doing right now must be correct, and our digital footprint doesn't really need attention.
Yeah, and the danger there is the fundamental misunderstanding of what is actually driving that revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Because relying entirely on momentum usually means a company is surviving on the byproduct of past relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Referrals, repeat clients, legacy contracts.
Which are great, obviously.
Oh, they're incredibly valuable. But they are not a predictable, scalable growth system. A scalable system has measurable inputs and outputs. You know your acquisition costs, you understand your conversion rates, and you have visible levers you can pull to increase pipeline volume.
Right, whereas referrals are just a black box.
Exactly. You have zero visibility into your future pipeline, which means when the current naturally slows down, and it always does, you have absolutely no engine to turn on to replace those leads.
It's basically the equivalent of coasting downhill on a bicycle. The wind is in your face, the speedometer says 30 miles an hour, and you feel like you are commanding this high-performance machine.
Right.
But you don't actually have an engine. You just have gravity working in your favor.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And the second the market flattens out or, a new competitor enters the space and forces you to pedal uphill, you are dead in the water. Because you never bothered to build a propulsion system. You were just reacting to the terrain.
And when that momentum inevitably stalls out, the immediate reaction is to finally, look at the digital footprint.
Yeah.
But then the second layer of avoidance kicks in.
The excuses start.
Right. Leadership looks at their site and says, well, our website works fine.
Mm-hmm.
And we really need to look closely at how the word works is being applied there.
Because their definition of works is a pretty low bar.
It's an incredibly low bar.
Yeah.
If a potential client types in a URL and text physically appears on a screen without crashing the browser, a lot of businesses consider that functional. But a site that merely loads is a far cry from a site that actively converts. Functional just means the server is running. Aligned means the site is actively participating in the psychology of persuasion.
So let's talk about the mechanics of that failure, because it's completely different from how failure looks in the physical world.
Totally.
If you run a brick-and-mortar storefront and your layout is terrible or, your inventory is just a total mess, you see the consequences. A customer walks in, looks visibly confused, wanders around in frustration, and maybe even complains to a manager on their way out.
You get that visceral, immediate feedback.
Exactly. But in the digital world, friction doesn't generate complaints. It generates silence.
Just silence.
A user encounters a vague headline or a really confusing navigation menu or a site that takes 4 seconds too long to load on their phone. They don't fill out a form to tell you they're leaving. They just close the tab.
And they never come back. The modern buyer owes you absolutely nothing, and your closest competitor is quite literally one click away.
Yeah.
That silent failure is so eerie because it leaves no diagnostic trail. You are losing high-intent prospects at the exact moment they are forming their very first impression of your brand, and you have no idea it's even happening.
I want you to think about your own browsing habits for a second. When was the last time you abandoned a clunky, slow, or confusing website without leaving a complaint? Drop your experience in the comments below, because we all do this constantly, usually several times a week.
Well, at least.
Yet somehow, business owners assume their own potential clients are extending them a level of grace that they themselves never give to others.
Right, and because that failure is entirely silent, The business misdiagnoses the root problem.
Always.
They see that the website isn't bringing in new deals, so they assume the issue is just a lack of traffic. They decide it's time to, quote-unquote, do marketing.
Here we go.
Yeah, so they deploy a quick fix. Maybe a $500 ad campaign on LinkedIn, or paying someone to boost a few posts on social media. And they direct all that new paid traffic to a homepage that hasn't been structurally updated in 4 years.
Right. The messaging is vague, the contact form is buried somewhere, and the user intent doesn't match the landing page at all.
Exactly. So the campaign fails.
Shocker.
Right. It generates clicks, but 0 qualified leads.
It fails because they are deploying fragmented tactics without any foundational structure. I mean, a single ad campaign is not a system.
No, it's not.
But human nature dictates that the business won't blame their own underlying architecture. They're going to blame the tactic. They walk away saying, we tried LinkedIn ads, they don't work for our industry.
They blame the tool because acknowledging the broken foundation requires a much heavier lift. It's like trying to build a roof before you've poured the concrete foundation and then concluding that roofs just don't work in your neighborhood.
That's a perfect analogy. You are throwing money at visibility, but you have no underlying mechanism to capture, educate, or convert the people who actually stop to look.
Bad execution does not invalidate the concept of marketing. It simply exposes the absence of a deliberate system. If your core positioning isn't clear, if your messaging doesn't directly address your buyer's pain points, your marketing spend is just going to evaporate into the noise.
Yeah.
Tactics are completely dependent on the strategy holding them together.
So if the underlying issue is that a business is literally bleeding money through silent exits and wasted ad spend, the logical question is why any rational business owner would continue to put off fixing it.
Right.
And usually the barrier isn't a lack of awareness, it's the financial dread of writing a large upfront check for comprehensive foundational work. Fixing the architecture is an investment. Doing nothing feels safer because doing nothing feels free.
And that is the trap of only measuring the cost of action.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, the cost of action is a defined, visible number on a proposal. You see exactly what you are spending. What they fail to calculate is the invisible monthly tax they are paying by standing still. That is the cost of inaction.
How does that actually manifest on the ledger, though? Because if they can't see it, it's really hard to convince them it's real.
It manifests as compounding technical and competitive debt. While you stay stagnant, your competitors are modernizing. They are capturing the search authority for your primary services. They're refining their user experience.
So they're pulling ahead while you're parked.
Exactly. Every single month you wait, the gap between your digital presence and theirs widens. When you finally decide to act 3 years from now, it will cost significantly more capital and time to close that gap than it would have today.
Wow.
You're paying a heavy price in lost market share and missed positioning. It just isn't itemized on a monthly invoice.
What random marketing tactic have you tried that just disappeared into the void because the foundation wasn't ready for it? Let us know in the comments. I think every business has at least one story of throwing money at a fragmented tactic.
Oh, absolutely.
But let's look at the second major barrier, because if it isn't the money stopping them, it's the sheer dread of the time commitment.
The claim is always, we simply don't have the bandwidth to overhaul our digital presence right now.
I hear that constantly. And, to play devil's advocate, I completely understand it.
Sure.
Setting up a comprehensive digital architecture from scratch requires dozens, sometimes hundreds of hours from leadership. They have to sit through strategy sessions, clarify their positioning, approve copy, map out buyer journeys.
It's a lot.
For a business owner who is already stretched incredibly thin, just keeping the operational lights on, how do you bridge the gap between this takes too much time and you need to do this now?
You bridge it by showing them the math of cognitive load versus operational efficiency. Yes, building the system requires an intensive upfront investment of time.
Right.
But when a business lacks digital structure, they are paying a massive recurring time tax every single day. Without a system, every inquiry that comes in has to be handled reactively. Every time you need to communicate your value, you are reinventing the wheel. You're scrambling in the moment.
So you are talking about the hours wasted on the back end because the front end isn't doing its job.
Precisely. Think about how many 45-minute discovery calls a sales team takes that go absolutely nowhere because the prospect misunderstood the offering or couldn't afford the service.
Way too many.
Right. A properly aligned digital presence acts as an automated filter. It uses clear, rigid messaging to intentionally repel the wrong fits and actively educate the right ones before they ever pick up the phone.
That's huge.
The upfront hours you spend refining your positioning buy back hundreds of hours of wasted sales time and repetitive administrative work. Structure doesn't add time to your plate, it recovers it.
It builds tracks for the train to run on so you don't have to pave a new road every time you want to move forward. That filtering mechanism is arguably the most valuable part of the whole equation.
Without a doubt.
Now, we're going to tackle the biggest myth in this industry in just a second, the idea that certain sectors are magically exempt from all of this. But if you're finding this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit subscribe on our YouTube NC Web Dev channel right now so you never miss all the new stuff we have coming out.
Yes, definitely subscribe.
So, getting back to that industry myth, the ultimate comfort blanket. Our industry is different.
Business leaders love to lean on this.
They really do.
They claim their sector is too niche, too heavily reliant on long-term relationships, or just too traditional for digital presentation to matter.
Let's test that theory. Take a highly specialized, old-school sector, say commercial freight logistics or heavy industrial manufacturing. It is a fact that multi-million-dollar contracts in those spaces are finalized on golf courses, at industry conferences, and in private boardrooms.
Sure.
They are not finalized because someone clicked a Buy Now button on a website. Doesn't that prove their point?
It proves that the final transaction happens offline. It fundamentally ignores how the evaluation process has evolved.
Okay, unpack that.
The boardroom handshake is the very last step in a long journey. Regardless of whether you are in B2B logistics, heavy industry, or specialized consulting, modern buyers are predominantly millennials now.
Right.
They vastly prefer self-guided research over talking to a sales representative. They vet potential partners digitally, and they do it quietly, long before they ever initiate first contact.
They are running their initial due diligence from their phone at 9 o'clock at night while sitting on their couch.
Exactly. They're pulling up your leadership profiles, reading your case studies, cross-referencing your claims against your competitors, and forming hard, concrete opinions without you ever being in the room to defend yourself or pitch your value.
So the venue for the pitch has entirely changed.
Yes. The final channel of the sale might vary, but the behavior of the buyer does not. Everyone in every industry vets digitally.
Which completely shatters the next defense mechanism. The claim that we don't need a digital strategy because we run entirely on word of mouth. If people are quietly vetting you at 9 p.m., word of mouth isn't a standalone strategy anymore.
Word of mouth and digital presence are not mutually exclusive. One does not replace the other. In the modern buying journey, offline word of mouth relies entirely on digital verification to survive.
Think about it like being set up on a blind date. A trusted colleague comes to you and says, you absolutely have to meet this person. They are perfect for you. That is the offline referral.
Right.
That creates the initial spark of interest.
Yeah.
But the second your colleague leaves the room, what is the very first thing you do?
You Google them.
Exactly. You pull out your phone and you search for that person's name. You look for proof to validate the recommendation. If you find a digital footprint that looks chaotic or concerning or is just completely absent, that growing referral is instantly compromised.
The exact same psychological process happens in B2B purchasing. Someone hears your company's name from a trusted peer. They pause. They search. And what they find in that critical, quiet moment will either confirm the competence implied by the referral or quietly undermine it.
Wow.
A referral gets you consideration. Your digital presence dictates whether they actually initiate contact.
If they pull up your site and it isn't mobile responsive, the last Insight article is from 6 years ago, and the messaging reads like a generic template from a competitor, the trust deficit opens up immediately.
Yeah,
The referral just dies on the vine and you never even knew it happened.
exactly.
So let's say the business owner finally accepts this. They understand the silent failure, they recognize the time tax, they admit their industry isn't exempt. They still employ a delay tactic. They say, we know it's a problem, we will fix it later, next quarter, or when the slow season hits. Let's look at the actual mechanics of later.
Later implies that the problem is static, and it is not.
Right.
Delaying a foundational fix doesn't pause the bleeding, it compounds the issue. What feels like a slightly manageable misalignment today drifts further out of alignment with every passing month.
Because the market isn't pausing with you.
Precisely. The digital ecosystem is actively moving. Search engine algorithms update, user expectations evolve, and your competitors are not waiting for you to catch up. They're optimizing their funnels and aggressively capturing the search authority you are ignoring.
Later is an active decision with a severe penalty attached to it. But we have to look at the psychological reason people choose later, because it isn't always just laziness or budget constraints. It is often sheer overwhelm. They literally don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And that overwhelm is frequently paired with a visceral feeling that marketing, in general, feels fake, pushy, or inauthentic to them.
Those two reactions, the paralysis of not knowing where to start and the resistance to feeling salesy, they point to the exact same root cause. They stem from the absence of a system.
So,
When you don't have a clear structural framework for your messaging and your buyer journey, every single marketing option feels equally valid and equally overwhelming.
you just start guessing.
You guess. Should we rewrite the homepage? Should we start a YouTube channel? Should we post on LinkedIn every day? With no logical starting point, you execute disconnected efforts.
Right.
And disconnected efforts feel forced to the creator because they literally are forced. You are trying to manufacture momentum out of thin air instead of building a logical narrative. When you bypass the architecture and just yell, "Hire us," into the void, it feels sleazy.
But when you have a system, it changes the entire dynamic. If your digital presence is designed as a structured journey, say, an insightful piece of content that naturally leads a prospect to a helpful diagnostic tool, which then seamlessly leads to a targeted consultation, none of that feels pushy.
Not at all.
It feels like a service. It is grounded in how your business actually solves problems. It makes the digital footprint authentic because it is rooted in your actual operational foundation, not just chasing whatever trend the algorithm favors this week.
And when you refuse to build that foundation, when you ignore digital stewardship, the penalties are severe. This brings us to the ultimate stakes, the inevitable loss.
The stuff you can't measure.
Right. The most expensive gaps in any business are the ones that will never, ever appear on a spreadsheet or a quarterly financial report.
Because you simply cannot measure what never happened. You can't track the phone call that wasn't made.
Exactly right. Consider the clients who almost chose you. They had the intent, they had the budget, they found your digital presence, but something in that experience didn't hold up to their standards.
The user experience was frustrating.
Or the trust signals were missing, or the messaging was vague, so they moved on to a competitor without saying a single word.
And the more painful realization is the loss of high-value opportunities. If a company wants to move upmarket and attract better-fit premium clients, they require stronger digital positioning. If you are trying to charge premium rates, your digital presence has to signal premium competence.
Weak signals actively filter out high-value prospects. A top-tier client looks at an outdated, fragmented digital footprint and silently assumes that your operational standards match your digital standards. They decide, this company isn't operating at my level, and they filter you out before you even know they are looking.
Which leads to a complete loss of control over your own brand's perception. The shift here is moving away from the concept of marketing and embracing the concept of stewardship. It is an asset you have to actively manage, not a switch you flip when you realize your pipeline is running dry.
Without stewardship, your brand's presence in the market is being shaped entirely by your absence. It is shaped by the narrative you aren't directing, the clarity you aren't providing, and the vacuum you leave behind. And the market will always fill a vacuum with assumptions.
Right. Misalignment never stays neutral.
No, it is an active state of decay.
Your digital presence is already out there, in the wild, shaping decisions with or without your involvement. The businesses that recognize this and close the gap now won't be the ones scrambling when their historical momentum finally runs out. So, I want to turn this back to you listening. Where do you think your business is currently losing invisible opportunities? Is it a messaging mismatch? A disjointed buyer journey? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. It's time to stop coasting on momentum and start taking control of the narrative.
Think about it this way. If your digital presence is essentially a silent employee working for you 24/7, based purely on what it looks like today. Wait, let me rephrase. Based purely on what it looks like today, what exactly is it saying behind your back right now?